Listen up.
Welcome to the PowerShell Podcast, the podcast for PowerShell and the PowerShell community. And now, here's your host, Andrew Pla.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the PowerShell Podcast. And this is a podcast I'm pretty excited for, where I get to actually talk with the developer on the PowerShell team, formerly a longtime community member, and someone who I've wanted to talk to for a while, but I recently got connected with, Patrick Meinecke, aka SeeminglyScience, if you've been on GitHub or socials. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So, gosh, you've been in the community for a long time, and I want to talk about your transition because you're like one of us. You kind of came up in PowerShell. You weren't traditionally a developer. Can you tell us a little bit about your work before you got into the PowerShell team at Microsoft?
Yeah, so I have been in system administration for a pretty long time, in tech support in general. Probably about, 15 years, something like that. And then within the last 3, I made the transition to, I should say there were a couple positions where it was like a mix of sysadmin and dev, right? So it wasn't just a overnight switch, but about 3 years ago, joined the PowerShell team, and it's been great.
Before you joined the PowerShell team, though, those who have been in the community for a while have seen your name a ton because you were super active on the GitHubs. That's why I kind of, in my mind, thought you were at Microsoft longer, just because I've seen you on the repos for such a long time. But what repos did you first start getting involved with from the PowerShell?
So I think the first one that I really got involved in was PowerShell Editor Services, which is the language server that the VS Code extension uses. This was back when David was the architect of the whole language server, and David was the architect of the language server. One of the APIs that he worked on was in VS Code, there's the PS editor variable that lets you interact with the editor. You can add text, you can add editor commands. And so I had made a library of helper commands. And at the time, no one was really utilizing it at all, or you just didn't really see anyone touching it. So, he was very excited to see somebody in the community actually using it. So from there, I think the first big thing that I added to the product was the commands module. So if you see in VS Code, you can do find-ast. That was one of the first things that I worked on.
Why were you working on these things? Because help me bridge that gap between sysadmin, maybe a little bit of coding, to interacting with PowerShell editor services. Was it fulfilling a work need, or is this more like an interest?
So it was just really cool.
It is cool.
Specifically, I remember I was never too big into the ISE. I don't know why. It's a good product. I just, for me personally, I never really liked it. I remember I used Dell had some editor for a while. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Dell?
Was
it like PowerScript or something?
Yeah, it was something like that. I remember I used that for a long time, and then eventually I begrudgingly started using the ISE, and then I saw, that's around when VS Code came out, and I saw that there was a lot of work going on in the language server, and that they had this little PS editor thing that you could play with, and you could actually customize your experience a lot more. And I know the ISE had this too, but it was this modern editor with this customizability that I really liked. So I just kind of dove in. And the AST is a weird place to start. I don't recommend it if you're as a starter project. But it was a really fun thing to tear into.
Sounds like it. What other things you work on at Microsoft? So you're talking VS Code, some editor services, any other projects you're looped into?
So now I primarily work on PowerShell itself. And at the moment, that mostly means security stuff. Until things come out, there's obviously not a lot I can talk about there. Yep. But honestly, most of it is pipeline stuff. I did also work on the you can now pipe bytes between executables. Does that ring any bells? You know what I'm talking about?
I mean, that's a little outside of the things I've interacted with, but I did not know that. Piping bytes from executables. So like what's the use case? Like so, return code or?
Let's say you have like curl. Mm-hmm. Let's say that you're trying to download a binary file. You don't want that to be encoded into a string, right?
Yeah.
So if you then pipe it to a different native executable that,
Gotcha.
Or also it now works with redirection. So if you do curl redirect to a file, it just writes the byte stream to the file. It does not encode it first, put it through out file. So currently you can't like pipe bytes to a PowerShell command, but it enables a lot of those like copy paste install instructions that previously wouldn't work.
Nice. And when you say the redirect operator, you mean the greater than sign and then just typing in a text file or a exe Correct. Or whatever kind of file afterwards?
Yep.
Yeah. That's one of the cooler features that I eventually discovered about PowerShell was that redirect output thing. I think you can specify some other stuff with it too. Like maybe move the errors to null or things like that potentially.
Yep. You can do that. You can redirect errors into output. Very recently, Jim, before he retired, added support for redirecting to a variable. So you can now do the variable drive. So you would do variable : and then your variable name, and it'll redirect. You could do that with errors. So to greater than variable, and then
Oh, is that newer?
It's very new. It's very new. Probably within the last year, I want to say.
Gosh, shout out to PowerShell 7. Got to get on it. I feel like a lot of these things aren't where it's like this is the one reason why you jump, but like eventually you're going to run into some of these things, and having the built-in support for it is going to save you some struggle, save you some context switching.
I mean, the way that I look at that is a lot like there were a lot of orgs for the longest time that stayed on 2, right? And you're always looking for reasons to convince like higher ups that I want 5 everywhere, right? And in some orgs, that's a very difficult thing to do. I think it's the same kind of thing. Eventually, there will be enough features that you specifically want that you will be able to convince someone to put it everywhere.
Yep. I know on my machines, I'm always just using PowerShell 7 for my stuff. And if I have to go to a 5.1 client, maybe I'll have to trim back what I'm doing. But for the daily usability, there's no way I'd go back. No offense.
Oh, yeah. I mean, especially just like tab completion is every time I have to like switch the editor back to 5.1 for something, it is brutal how bad the IntelliSense is.
Yeah. All right, here's a question, and it's kind of hard to phrase, so I'm going to try.
Okay.
You work on a few different things at Microsoft. The PowerShell engine, there's a whole lot going on there. And as you work on it over time, I imagine your brain starts to kind of be able to see the whole thing generally and kind of how things interact. Same thing with kind of VS Code and the ecosystem and the editor services and all that. Of all the things you interact with, which takes up the most structures in your brain, if you could think of it like that? Like what takes the most brain power to think about the whole thing before you can start writing code, kind of getting into the zone for that?
I think I'm kind of a very all or nothing type of person. I either understand a system or it takes a lot of work before I can do anything. That's probably why I go very deep in certain things. But I would say the more I know a system, the less brain power it takes to just start writing or determine where an issue might be. I can usually pinpoint pretty quickly with PowerShell, depending on the area. There are areas like remoting. Jordan knows way more about remoting than I do. Travis also. Same with security. The web commands, Justin knows more than me for sure.
Work with a lot of people who are very knowledgeable. I think there's also just a lot to know. Like to really become an expert at the PowerShell engine is going to take some time.
Oh yeah, I mean it depends on what you want to focus on, but there is, I mean that's one of the best things about it. Really, is that there's just an endless amount that you can learn. If you like to learn, PowerShell is a pretty cool place to be.
I talk to people a lot about how cool it is, like get into Azure Functions or getting into sending REST API calls to kind of tie things together with PowerShell. It gives you this new execution space. But in kind of a similar but different way, so does the PowerShell engine. Like for your custom experience right there, you're able to interact with different things, which I personally haven't done a ton of, but I've used modules that take advantage of it. I think PS Readline interacts with the engine in some ways to kind of maybe the IntelliSense stuff.
A little bit. It just calls an API for that, but yeah.
A local API, right? It's like a PowerShell engine API.
Yep. The same one that goes through the tab expansion 2 function.
Yeah. So this is an area where it seems like you're very strong at. I'm a little bit newer at. Not only are you strong at it, you've maybe written some of the things that you'd be interacting with or at least quite familiar with them.
Or touched them, yeah.
Yeah. What do you think? When do beginners, like, what do they start dabbling with when it comes to maybe the AST or the PowerShell engine? Where do you see people kind of stumbling to first?
So I'd say it's a particularly hard question, especially when it comes to how, because everybody learns differently, right? For me, the answer is always that thing you want to do. That's where you start. If you don't have a thing that you want to do, I am not the person to ask how you get motivation for it. Yeah, I mean, you can invent reasons why you want to do a thing, and that can kind of help. But if you're trying to learn something and you don't have a goal in mind, it can be challenging to get through it.
Maybe let's break this down a little bit. What do we mean when we say interact with the PowerShell engine? Like, what does that even mean? Just running PowerShell, or?
I would say that is a very philosophical question. That could mean running code. That could mean parsing. It could mean command discovery or the compiler. It could, if you do something and it touches the system.management.automation, I would call that interacting with the engine in some way.
What are common ways that people are interacting with the engine? Like, what can you even do other than running code, the kind of usual process?
Yeah, so I would say command discovery is a big one. That is, in a sense, interacting with the engine. That is not either implicitly command discovery, where you just run a command and it possibly imports a module, or using git command. In a sense, you could call git help to be interacting with the engine. Git member is interacting with the member binder. And then if you want to go deeper, you could have a dynamic meta object provider to provide custom member binding to an object. That is a more niche, weird use case.
I think you got me thinking in the right spot because, okay, I'm thinking PowerShell engine. PowerShell's helpful. You can type aliases. It can kind of imply what you're doing sometimes. And I think all that's the engine, right? So like say I run GCM instead of git command. You don't have to be correct about this, but can you generally maybe tell me a couple things that happen whenever I press enter? Because I'm sure there's kind of a lot in the background, but just generally, we're using an alias, we press enter.
So specifically resolving the alias.
Sure.
Okay. So
GCM.
The first thing that it would do is look at the current session state and get the current scope from the current session state. It would then there's a method called get alias, or no. So it creates a command searcher, first of all, that will iteratively look through each scope. And it'll first look for aliases, then functions, then if it's a path, it'll look for a script. And then I think after that, it'll look for applications. And then I believe if it fails that, it will look for modules to import. If it fails every previous scope. So if you have a bunch of scopes, that'll take slightly more time. And every time it is looking at a scope, it will look at the function or alias table, which is just a dictionary on the session state scope, and try and pull a value out of that.
So
that makes sense, or is that gibberish?
No, that makes sense. You press enter, and it kind of tries to figure out what you're trying to do, and it has to go through a number of things because PowerShell's flexible in that way, and it wants to make sure it's done it right.
Yep.
But that can also get confusing.
It can be. It can be. Especially because it'll look at people think of commands as not global, but more global than they would like a variable, right? But they are as local as a variable is. So you can define a function and inside of your function, and it will only be resolvable there. You can define an alias; it's only resolvable there.
Huh. And might be a really hard question, but what's a cool part of PowerShell that you've seen used but not enough, and you think it's super cool?
I think ETS doesn't get used as much.
ATS?
ETS, the Extendable Type System, specifically, like you don't see a lot of property adapters, which are very cool. You can register a property adapter for just a type name, and it's just a bit of code. You kind of have to do it in C# because otherwise, when you try to access a member, it kind of goes in a loop because you're writing in PowerShell, so it thinks you're trying to, but that's a really cool part of PowerShell that I don't see a lot.
So it converts the property within a given type?
So you know how if you have a dictionary, and you can use the property syntax to look up a key value.
Yeah.
But that's not a property, right?
Right.
In the same way that like count is.
Right.
It's
like, so if we had a variable object.name, if we're trying to access the name property of it.
Right. But like a dictionary doesn't have a name property, but it will allow that syntax to go look up the key if there is one. Now, that's actually a bad example of what I'm talking about because that's technically just built into the binder. It's not actually an adapter. But like think of a WMI object. Again, it's not a .NET property when you're getting computer name or whatever off of a WMI object or a SIM object. Instead, it's an adapter that PowerShell, when you try to do a member binding operation, it will it'll look up if there's any adapters for this type, and it will say, give me your properties. Do you have a property that matches this name? So it lets you define what is a property generically for any member of a type, any instance of a specific type.
Powerful stuff. I have not heard of that property
Yeah.
adapter.
It's very cool. Sorry, go ahead.
Maybe someone will steal it and do a conference talk on it, but what's another one?
So there's also type converter. You can register in the same way. That one you can kind of write in script if you're careful, but you can also get into Stack Overflow if you get that. If you try to cast in the middle of it, it's going to be a problem. But that allows you to define a like, you know how if you take an enum value and you cast it to a string, that's built into the engine, right? But you can define your own without even owning either type. You can just say, I want to support casting from this type to this type. Here's how I'm going to do it. Now, you can't do it for every type. Some types are hard-coded to only go through the normal conversion path, usually for security. But yeah, that's another very cool aspect.
So could you potentially take every single number that comes through and like turn it into a string of that number kind of thing? Like instead of the digit 2?
I think those are hard-coded.
Yeah,
but
that would make sense.
One of the places that I used it for is conversion to delegates. So I would define an intermediate type, let's say PS delegate, that I can use as like instead of just casting a script block to the delegate, which you can do, you have the intermediate so that I can control how the script block is actually converted to a delegate. And in that case, it was for PS Lambda, which I don't actually recommend anyone use, but it's one of my old modules where I would do a more strict version of compilation for a script block. You
got me thinking. Some of this stuff's got my brain stretching a little bit.
It's fun, right?
It absolutely is. I'm curious to find out like where you view yourself in things, because I got to imagine it's kind of got to be interesting, like maybe imposter syndrome wise, maybe like, wait, what the heck am I doing? To go from being a customer of a programming language to then working on the team. And now you've been doing it for a couple of years, so maybe it's easier to talk about, but are you getting more comfortable with writing code that so many people touch? Probably a little different than working as a sysadmin.
That part I was oddly fine with for a while. No, I think the first time that I added when I added the commands submodule to editor services, I was pretty panicky about that. And then no one used it, so it was fine. But yeah, no, that part is not too bad. It is very strange in a lot of ways. Like, I don't think I ever told him this, or I haven't told him this yet, but talking with Jason Helmick, one of the ways that I initially learned PowerShell was, the same video that everyone's seen with Jason and Snover. And so it's very surreal to just be in a conversation, like a one-on-one conversation where we're just talking normally about like some project. It is very surreal, and awesome, of course. And he's really awesome. He's exactly like he is in like a video,
He really is.
It is not an act. That's just what that dude be like. And it is very cool to see.
Absolutely. Yeah. I did a podcast with him recently, and I was trying, he's not going to admit it, but I was saying how fortunate we are to have so many people who've really poured so much of themselves into the PowerShell team over the years. And Jason Helmick has absolutely been doing that for a super long time. No chance he's not a legend, and we're all so much better off for it. But I was trying to mix that in. And, he's very humble and willing to share the praise with others. But I had that occurrence when I was interviewing him. Like over the years, there have been so many amazing people who've worked on the PowerShell team. Oh, and yeah. You're part of that too. So that's pretty awesome.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. I too do not like, I do not know how to handle praise directly, but I do appreciate it.
Yeah, I think we all struggle with it in different ways. Gosh, yeah, the PowerShell team at Microsoft. Are you located in Washington? Are you remote?
Nope, I am in Maryland.
Oh, nice.
So I am full-time remote, which it's worked out very well. I'm sure lots of folks have different opinions about how work from home is, but I quite like it. I was always the type of person to have headphones in the office anyway, so I probably missed out on a few of those mythical whiteboard collaboration spontaneous events anyway.
Nice. Well, we have a quick word from our sponsors, but when we get back, I want to ask you about your community engagement because I've noticed a trend. It's a good trend, but be right back.
This is the PowerShell Podcast.
Most of you know the PowerShell Podcast is sponsored and made possible by PDQ. I've had questions from listeners asking, what's PDQ and what do you do? Well, we help IT teams automate endpoint management. PDQ Connect is our cloud-based tool for real-time software deployment, patching, scripting, remote access, and vulnerability management. It's fast, flexible, and built for people who just want things to work. If you want to see it in action, head to pdq.com/podcast and check out our interactive demo. No signups, no emails, no credit card, just a fast and easy way to explore how it works. That's pdq.com/podcast. Automated endpoint management that doesn't slow you down.
Now, back to the PowerShell Podcast.
All right, Patrick, we're talking community stuff. And something that I think is really cool is you've been active in the community since before you were on the Microsoft team. And now that you're on the Microsoft team, you're still getting there when you can. Which reminds me of Sean Wheeler and many others in the community. And I think it's super sick. It's really awesome to be able to interact with the actual people who are working on the language that you're using every day.
And Meinecke also.
Oh, Meinecke, yep.
He came from the community.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, I love Meinecke. Huge fan of Meinecke. But what drives you to do that? It's just kind of where you come from. It feels natural. Is there a push within the team? Do you see others doing it? Sort of, why would you be active on communities when you have work to do?
That is a great question. That is just, I just like doing it. It's the thing. It's like people bring you interesting problems to solve, and then they're thankful that you solved their fun problem for them. It's like a cheat code. I want interesting problems to solve. They bring them to me, and then they're also grateful for some reason that I solved their fun thing, that they were like, they would have had fun if they solved it, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think you spent a lot of years learning some skills that would take time for others to kind of do it quite as swiftly.
Oh yeah. I mean, there is no universe where I would know a lot less than I do today. Because people bring interesting problems, and my curiosity makes me go find out the answer. And I wouldn't have come across that problem.
Yep.
I come across a lot of weird problems, but not all of them.
And I can imagine if you're spending a ton of time in a language in the weird areas, it's nice to hear other people with not just the basic, hey, I can't pipe these two commands or something like that. Like they're actually in the nitty gritty too. They might have seen some of your work.
But those are fun too.
Yeah.
I think there is a special kind of joy that comes from helping someone understand something. It is a very unique thing. So while I would say generally I do try to share the wealth a bit and let other people answer the easier ones, sometimes I'll jump in. Sometimes I can't help myself.
It feels good. It feels good to do. And I think I try and share that message with others. Even these experts who know all this stuff, it is fun to share that with others. A lot of us have geeked out and banged our heads against the keyboards for a long time on some of these things. And being able to share that with others, it feels great. And there's also that unknown of like, gosh, this person I helped out now with this beginner thing, who knows 9 years from now, 5 years from now, like you've seen a lot of people, if you've been around for a while, go from asking super beginner questions to doing really awesome things with their career and then being the people who answer those questions at times. It's kind of part of the learning process if you're really going to learn this stuff.
And sometimes it can be the difference between whether or not someone sticks around and gets very passionate can be very minor in how you answer their question. The more encouraging or just the more you make it seem correctly that they were not a burden, the more likely they are to become very passionate about what you helped with. I've seen a lot of folks over the years go from not quite this basic, but how do I open PowerShell to here's this custom p invoke thing that I wrote, and here's this huge project that utilizes it, or
Yeah. I think what you talk to speaks to something that I care about a lot. And that's, it's nice to be nice just to be nice. Okay, cool. Some people are going to be motivated by that. But the truth is, when you're kind and welcoming to new people, you actually make the ecosystem, an environment, and community that you exist in better. That's what's really important. It's not about just being a good person, which is very important, but there's benefits that we all like. It's good for selfish reasons. It's good for community reasons. So whatever kind of person you're doing, this is pretty much the correct approach. You should try and make things approachable for people and encourage them to come back and maybe contribute to projects, open source, all kinds of good stuff can come from that. But
yeah. And if you can help people accomplish the things that they want to accomplish, then you can overall, like, I think me sitting down and writing code is one of the, depending on what I'm working on, one of the least impactful ways that I can interact. Because if I instead help 10 different people write and finish a PR, then that is much better use of my time.
do you find yourself interacting with people who are submitting PRs or issues in that capacity?
Oh, for sure. Jordan's a big one.
Jordan Borian?
Yeah. He's submitted a lot that I still need to review. I'm sorry, Jordan. I'm working on it. Justin's also done a few, I believe. Has he done? I don't remember.
Justin Grody?
Definitely he's done a lot with editor services. Also, Jordan has too.
Yeah.
Martin GC is one that I don't interact with outside of GitHub because, man, there's no contact information. But he's submitting some absolute bangers of most of the IntelliSense improvements have been just from him. Like, it's crazy. He does a lot of good work.
Martin GC94, right?
Yeah.
Try tracking him down. I want to talk to more of these contributors who maybe aren't actually in the community outside of GitHub. So if you're listening, or if you know anybody who's a big contributor, send them my way. I'd love to pick their brain a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And I'd like to know more. Every time I see a PR, it's like, tell me your story.
Right? Yeah, like, especially if you're using PowerShell this much, like, how are you using it? Where has it found you? Why are you so deep in it, having fun, creating PRs?
Yeah, and those are hugely informative, especially the how you're using PowerShell. Because PowerShell is so interesting because it is there's so many people who use it, but they will never talk about it because it's either a somewhat small facet of their job, or most people just aren't uploading their automation scripts because it's either very domain specific, or corporate reasons that are understandable. Like, I mean, I've been using PowerShell for far longer than I've been a part of the community.
That's true for a lot of us. Yeah. Got to get out there.
But that's why it is really good to know, like, all of these different unique bespoke use cases for PowerShell that some we didn't really consider or cater to. It's always very interesting.
So pre-Microsoft, were you doing like IAC stuff, or what type of sysadmin work were you doing?
A little bit. Yeah, there's a little bit here and there. Not as much as I would like. It was not like I was just doing Docker containers like the best way, right? It was a lot of imaging or automating software installs. Like my last job was more endpoint management oriented, and there was a huge amount of software that they were previously they had a tech go and just click buttons, and it was for local government too. So it is a lot of different types of applications with different types of installers. I've really learned a lot about the different types of installers that are out there, and a lot of them are terrible.
What's your favorite? Unofficial.
MSI.
Yeah.
Easy. Assuming they don't have any custom actions that ruin silent installs. It had one that popped up an FBI copyright notice.
Wow.
And there was no. I think I may have ended up like patching the MSI to take just that custom action out. It was crazy.
Can anybody just use that? Like, hey, FBI can press fines if you steal this content? Because I might just start using that just to make things seem more important. Like, do not redistribute this.
Yeah, it was very strange. Like, literally, it would pop up. I swear they like took a picture of like one of the old VHS splash screens. Not even just like the text in a box. Like, they popped up the actual image. It was weird.
That is wild. So then you joined Microsoft, and I'm curious what it was like early on. So you joined Microsoft. You're familiar with some of these repos already. Like, literally, you've seen them all. You've interacted. You've created PRs. But you joined Microsoft. Maybe they have a different way they do some things internally. You're trying to get up to speed with all the different things. Are you taking notes as you go? Are you just memorizing everything? Are you referring to internal resources as you go about your job and interacting with these different things? Or what was that sort of learning process like for you?
Yeah, just taking notes. There are also internal resources, asking folks. I would say, like, for the most part, it's not that different from the outside. You do get some insights into certain things that may have been more confusing without that insight. I would say the most eye-opening has been the release process, just how much goes into it. I knew that a lot went into it, but boy, is there a lot. It is a several-day affair, and it takes up a person's time doing it every release, or several people.
Wow. How often is the release cadence?
Depends. Servicing is often every month. So it's like it's not a full week, but kinda is a full week. Just if someone's time just gone for that. So it's interesting. And I know you're probably thinking, how is it possible that it's not just automated? There's a lot more than you'd think. And there are understandable reasons why things can't necessarily be automated. Most of it is. But even then, it's like you're checking builds, you're seeing if something fails, and then you have to go fix it or talk to other people who know how to fix it, and then run everything again. It's like, what can you really get done in an hour between things when you have to like context switch like that.
Yeah. Just meditate, do some yoga or something. So it sounds like that's probably the most new, novel, complicated system that you've had to encounter would be the release process, because you probably had no insights into it prior. It's not an open source repo.
A lot of it is open source. I'm like there is some that's not, but yeah, like a lot of the Azure pipeline, the ADO pipeline is in the PowerShell repo, which I did not realize. I don't think. I think I may have kind of knew, but and it will reference some tools that aren't in there. But yeah, I think that's probably the most complicated system I've had to learn. At least aside from like random internal sites.
Do you know Anam or Tess?
Yeah.
The coworkers?
Yeah.
Y'all
I wouldn't say that I interact a ton, but I've definitely worked with Anam. We worked on troubleshooting something together. It was very good. Very smart.
She's fun. I love her. She gave a talk and she crushed it. So
that's awesome. I don't think I've gotten to work with Tess yet. I think we have talked briefly.
Yeah. I think Anam works more on the PowerShell engine-y stuff from the conversation I had with her.
PowerShell Git, I think.
PowerShell Git. I thought she mentioned something about security stuff.
Oh, yeah. She does also work on security. Yeah. That was what I worked with her on. I believe Tess's gallery, mostly gallery, maybe SSH.
I think SSH was a big one. Here's a question for you: Windows or Mac? What are we using these days?
I like Windows. Well, part of it is I like to game. I like to game a lot, and there are things that are harder to get to work on Mac.
Gaming is definitely one of them.
Yeah. Also, I know. So here's the biggest reason why I can't get into Mac is because, from what I understand, it is most beneficial when you fully bought into the ecosystem. And I'm not going to do that. I'm fine with Android. I don't need an iPhone. I have Windows customized to how I like. I'm sure there are a lot of great things about Mac. A lot of my coworkers love using Mac. I'm going to stick with the Windows, though.
I got to share this because the audience, if they've been listening for a while, I went on a Mac journey maybe 2 years ago, and I'm still on it at work. They offered me one. I'll be honest, I know that they let us keep our laptops like once they're retired or whatever. So I was like, I could use a MacBook. I enjoyed it a little bit. I do have an iPhone that I got around the same time, which I enjoyed. But I just recently, I was like, it's time for me to get a proper gaming PC as an adult. So I got my first one, and it's on Windows again. Feel so at home. I need my VS Code. I need my Windows terminal. I'm tired of iTerm 2. No offense. I know it's great, blah, blah, blah. I got to configure all these things. Windows terminal works so well. You can just install things that you need. You can actually game. Everything's a little bit, in my opinion, a little bit easier. I've seen the light again. I'm probably going to go back to Windows.
Yeah. So it is really interesting. There are a lot of things that I would personally say I don't like about how Mac or Linux is built. But I know logically that is because I come from Windows. I have used Windows all my life. I am used to the way that the systems behind them are so different that if you try to do things the same way, it doesn't work.
Like permissions and stuff like that.
Permissions, at a just a base level, how configuration is done, the whole API versus flat file, process versus thread, it is very, very different.
Yep.
And there's pros and cons to both. There is no objective truth. But subjectively, I like Windows.
That's fair. A good place to work if you like Windows too.
It is. Yeah.
What are some modules that are interesting to you? More geared towards the more intermediate to beginner.
More geared towards the intermediate to beginner. Okay. So I do. Okay. I have in research, I've watched a couple episodes, and I did notice a theme where you ask about modules. And
sometimes.
So I have prepared a couple. Would I call them intermediate to beginner? Maybe not, but there are a couple.
Okay.
So Martin GC has a very interesting module called Useful Argument Completers. I think that is useful to everybody. It has like completions for time zones, for COM object names, modules from the gallery. I think it has some Active Directory stuff in there. Just a huge list. There's a solid chance that if you've wanted an argument completer for something, it's probably in there somewhere. He also has a module called Display Config. And I just found out about this, but I was kind of looking to make something like this. And then I see that he's just got one. You can set like resolution, refresh rate, even the position, like, you go into the display and you can move them up and down. It can set that. PowerShell Run is one from MDGRS.
Yep.
I could not find their name for the life of me. I don't know if they have it anywhere.
Yeah, that's their name, MDGRS.
Yep. PowerShell Run's very cool. I don't use it as a launcher, but as a FCF replacement. Do you know what FCF is?
I do. Fuzzy Finder. So it allows you to type in something and kind of automatically put asterisks around it to find it for you.
Right. So I used to use FCF, and I haven't ported everything, but I used to use FCF as sort of a makeshift TUI for quick selections. And you can do a lot of customization with it. It's very cool. But the biggest problem with using FCF is if you want to launch PowerShell as a preview pane, that's going to be really slow. And you can't really pass it a lot of information. PowerShell Run is in process, and it knows what a script block is. It can do all that. So I've been having a lot of fun getting stuff set up with that.
Yeah, that's a really impressive module. Shout out to MDGRS. And I'll say on the Martin GC94 thing, he has some other modules too. Like that whole, figuring out how to interact with your monitors from PowerShell. I know I've looked at it and thought about it, and I was like, nope, not really going to be possible for me. He has one for display, monitor, also mouse settings. It's like all these things that weren't really possible. He had 3 stars on that mouse settings one. Martin GC.
Yeah, it's crazy, right?
He's putting out some good work. And if you have a connection to Martin GC94 out there, please let me know. I'm considering opening up an issue and being like, hey, this module is great. Can we talk about it sometime? But maybe I'll just keep bringing him up on the podcast.
Yeah, I think there was one of the PRs that he did just had a bunch of people just thanking him, just because there was no way to just thank him outside of that. Which is really cool. But yeah. So that's on that's on the more beginner to intermediate.
Yeah.
Less beginner to intermediate, but still, if I had to pick my favorite module, it would be ctypes. Do you know what I'm talking about? Is a Jordan Borean. He has a module called ctypes. It is modeled after Python's ctypes. It is basically a way to do pinvoke where you would normally need add type, but you can just you create you just do new ctypes lib kernel 32, and then you just call the function that you want to call. It makes trying to experiment with trying to figure out the right way to, it makes prototyping much easier, much easier. I do love that. He also has one PS Detour where you can hook native functions and write something out. You can audit, see what native APIs something is calling. Is very cool.
Jordan really knows his stuff. We're very fortunate to have his kind of Python perspective.
Oh yeah,
those are some good modules there. Okay, all right, you know your stuff, especially PowerShell Run. That was like kind of okay. You have your ear to the pulse. I'm curious where you heard about it.
They posted on the Discord.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I love that project. To me, that's one of those where I'm like, oh, this is so thoughtful and well designed. I probably would not have designed it the same way as elegantly, but I'm happy to take advantage of that project.
And so something that I have wanted to do for a long time, and I have like a dozen half finished versions of this, but I wanted to make, and I think there's a lot of room for this in PowerShell, a framework for a short-lived TUI interface. Like, I don't think it makes sense for a full TUI, like the like GUI.cs or something like that.
Yep.
Like, I think that's great. I don't think that makes as much sense integrated into like a workflow in PowerShell. I think very lightweight, ideally purely VT sequence based, short-lived, like just a selection of one thing. I think there's a lot of room for that. And I think the way that that was implemented in PowerShell Run is actually really good.
Have you checked out PowerShell Spectre Console?
Yeah, last time I looked at that, and it's been a while, it was less focused on. It was more like making outputs prettier than it is an actual interface. Like, there are some interfacey aspects, but it's not like, here, make an interface with this. You know what I mean? It's like a partial window rather than like you're now in this, right?
Gotcha. Yeah. I think there are some ways you could do. I think there's one called like Module Explorer is one that I did where it like you run start Module Explorer and it takes over the whole screen.
Yeah, I haven't looked at it recently.
Yeah.
That was like towards the beginning, and I don't know if I ever checked out the module itself. I checked out the library Spectre console.
Yeah, there's some interesting stuff there. I think that between PowerShell Run and PowerShell Spectre console, a lot of TUI needs are going to be covered there for people out there. And writing TUIs just feels fun. I agree that a full-on TUI isn't always the best, but I feel like a hacker whenever I spin it up and start arrow keying around and enter and do.
Yeah, I mean, I think it works best in a PowerShell workflow when it is like a short-lived thing, where it's just it gets you away from having to type a thing or whatever, but still keeps you in that flow of the console.
Kind of reminds me of. Are you thinking of something like Out Console Grid View, where it's like you get something, sort of. You pipe it to a personal filter, and then it automatically pipes it and executes based on whatever you filter? Yeah,
sort of. I mean, it is a little heavy for my taste. But I mean,
loading is. I think it's Avalonia, so I think it takes a while.
Well, for console grid view, I believe it was using TUI.cs. That would be that's a window application framework.
There was some project that used it. It might have been the cross-platform one. There was
probably. That sounds right. Um, yeah. I do vaguely remember that. I don't know if is that still a thing?
I don't know.
Was that us, or was that, I mean, it wasn't me at the time, but I can't remember if that
I
was
feel like I
community
remember
or,
Tyler being
yeah,
involved in some capacity,
that does sound like
but I think
it
Out
was
Console Grid
Tyler.
View came after.
Yeah, and I think that was also Tyler, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think so. Interesting. Yeah, things have come a long way. That's one of the joys about kind of being around for a while is you get to see things, people come and go and achieve great things, the product mature.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I think you kind of blew my mind in a lot of ways. We learned a lot about the engine. You know your stuff there, but you're also tapped in the community. You are kind of like, there's just so many of them. I guess it doesn't really feel like that, like an insider on the team, like you're one of us. It feels like everyone is kind of aligned with doing what's best for PowerShell, regardless of if you started off as a community member or not. But there are really a lot in there. I think Michael was also more of a community guy before he started working at Microsoft. Apparently, he's been there for a long time. Am I crazy on that? He was talking about
Mikey?
DSC, Michael Green.
Oh. I was like, Mikey, I think he joined around when I did.
When did Michael Green join?
I do vaguely, it seems like he was community, but I don't remember specifics.
Yeah, it looks like he started in June 2013. I think he was doing a bunch of DSC stuff for a while. He wrote some like letter about it. I can't remember all the details. But yeah, I guess that kind of community feel goes all the way through PowerShell team at Microsoft. Probably other teams as well. I'm just pretty much only know people on the PowerShell team.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's definitely a lot of community involvement. I will say though, that I don't know how much I would necessarily recommend it if you there are a lot of times I think the community needs spaces to complain openly. And I think generally, if there are a bunch of Microsoft folks sitting and watching, I think that makes it harder for folks to complain how they want to. And also, it's probably not great for mental health generally because you can't like correct people. That would be weird. Yeah, I never fault anybody for not doing it because I think there's a lot more nuance there than people expect. But I started in the community, so it's easy.
I always try and tell people, remind them that whenever you're opening issues or things like that, it is okay to express your opinion, but try not to be, making the days harder of those that are going to be having to read it.
Especially in an issue, because that is an open letter to a developer. And yeah, frustration is understandable, but it doesn't really help anything to put it all in there.
It's like most things. Everyone, if you don't have any insight into how things actually work, I think it's just like a snap of your fingers and things can get fixed. But when you actually see how things work, sometimes things take a while. Sometimes there's things waiting on it before it can happen and things like that. So yeah, just try and be kind because we're all kind of in this together, right? Same thing with the kindness thing. Like if you're nice to somebody, maybe they're going to be more willing and have a little bit more energy when they end up working on it. Whereas if you're rude, well, if you're really rude, it could potentially set someone back in productivity for a little bit longer.
Yeah. Or just, not make them want to help you much.
Exactly. And you'd be surprised. Like it's a secret that I talk to a lot of people, not a secret, but it's something that a lot of people have success with. Being kind when you ask for help goes a very long way, especially if you're trying to get time or the perspective of someone that may be a little bit more advanced from you in some ways. You're not doing anyone a favor if you're not being kind and appreciative about that interaction. Not saying you need to treat it like it's the biggest thing in the world, but a little bit of kindness goes an incredibly long way when dealing with humans.
And a little pro tip for anybody, if someone says, like, I'm so sorry this is taking so long, it'll go faster, genuinely, if you just say, oh, no, take your time. Because it takes out the extra level of stress and they can just function normally. Whereas if you're like, yeah, to hurry up, it's going to take longer.
Have you ever worked on closed source stuff?
Technically, I mean, not in Microsoft. Well,
Ish, maybe.
Ish, yeah. I mean, I've dabbled a little bit, I guess you could say.
But we'll call you an open source developer. Here's a question to an open source developer. Does the open source nature of things, how things are visible, how there's, these days CI/CD and automated tests and stuff, does that make you feel empowered and more confident as a developer? Or does it also introduce some downsides that kind of make it about even?
I don't mind at all the open part. I think the open part is great. I would actually say that is the best part of open source, is that you can just go read it. And you can see exactly why they did a thing. You can go look at the pull request and see the conversations out in the open. The harder part, and I think there was a lot of bad messaging early on. There was a lot of, well, if you want something, just go do it. You can just go file a pull request. It's not actually like that necessarily. Things, we can't accept every change that goes in. Sometimes it's not worth the maintenance. Sometimes it's just there would be a better design. And the biggest part is just getting through reviews. There's so many people want to add functionality, which is awesome, but it still takes a lot of time to make sure that there's no bugs. And regressions are not great, especially in like a servicing release. Not what you want.
Yeah. And there's a lot that goes into it. I think PowerShell is used in way more use cases than people may think of, just going through their own perspective. You, as the people responsible for it, and there's like agreements and stuff where it has to be supported or whatever, you have to take that a lot more serious than I do as someone who's just responsible for this little script I want to write.
And a lot of Azure relies on PowerShell heavily.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty big customer.
Yeah. Well, Patrick, I appreciate you joining me on here. It's been awesome to get to chat with you. And I've only just seen your profile picture, so getting to meet you has been awesome. Look forward to checking you out on GitHub. People out there, though, they've enjoyed it. They want to tap in a little bit. They want to keep in touch with you. Where can we find you? Is GitHub the best place? Is it your social media handle? Probably
Discord, to be honest. That's probably the best place. Go to the PowerShell Discord. I'll be around. I don't really look at Twitter or Blue Sky all that much. I would not open an issue to talk to me. That's probably not the best etiquette. But I'll be there too.
Awesome. Well, we look forward to seeing you, and I'm curious to see how things go over the next few years. I guess you're newer at Microsoft, so quite the journey ahead.
Scale of things for sure.
It's fun, man. Well, thank you so much. And thank you everybody out there for listening, and give us a like, comment, subscribe. Check out PowerShell Podcast every single Monday. PowerShell Wednesdays every single Wednesday, where we have live meetups. We show you how to code. We get our hands on the nitty gritty to grow as PowerShellers. Thank you, SeeminglyScience, aka Patrick Meinecke, for joining us today. Until next time.
Been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the PowerShell Podcast. The PowerShell Podcast is a PDQ production, making device management simple, secure, and pretty damn quick.